pleasure to have my good friend Andres, also from the F3 community, on our Success Story Hour or half hour. And Andres, it's a Friday morning. It's early. There aren't many people up right now, and it's kind of dark outside now that it's in the fall.
Yes.
So thank you so much for making this Friday especially special, having you on as a friend and as a client. So let's get into it.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. So, Andres, tell us about your athletic history, kind of things you did growing up. We'll go into that a little bit.
So I'm from Venezuela originally, and when you're from Venezuela, you either play soccer or baseball. And so I played soccer all my life. Grew up playing soccer in middle school, high school. In college, played intramural leagues, and then in my mid-20s started playing in some adult competitive leagues in DC, and just began to get injured, pulled groin, quad, hammy. And then I was also doing some calisthenics. I was doing P90X. I was doing these things.
Back in
the P90X.
Everyone's tried P90X at some point.
It was definitely, I remember I had to pull a bar at the door. And but what happened is I would have these stints where I would kind of have 3 months of just really doing something, and then I would have an injury.
Yes.
And so it was my shoulder, it was my groin, it was something. And then I would just kind of be completely just not doing anything for 6 months.
Yeah.
And basically, this was the cycle I went from my 20s, mid-20s, 25, to my late 30s, early 40s.
So basically, it sounds like a lot of people, what a lot of people in their 20s do is they say, oh, it'll get better on its own, and probably did after some rest, which is good. And now that you and I are not in our 30s anymore,
yes,
we'll just say, things have changed. So
yes.
Tell us what you've noticed in your maybe 30s and 40s.
Well, I mean, one thing was recovery. I remember my early days playing soccer. If I twisted an ankle, within a few days, I was back at it, right? When I was twisted an ankle in my 30s, I was out for a few weeks, if not longer. And then also injuries tended to just happen quicker. I guess I never fully healed, especially my right shoulder, which we've worked on a lot here.
Definitely.
I mean, it's been decades of just having a right shoulder that wasn't fully healed. And so I think it was just getting an injury. And also just psychologically, it made me scared to go after some activities. I'm not super competitive, but I like pushing myself to a limit.
Yeah, you want to push.
And so I felt like I couldn't do that much. And I think it was also not having the kind of support that you've given me to kind of coach me to kind of how to push myself to a point where I don't injure myself. And having that kind of support, something that I didn't have on my own.
Yeah. I think the cool part, and before we go into that, let's talk about life in F3 as far as how did that contribute to where your fitness level was before I saw you?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I came across F3 thanks to Orphan. Shout out Orphan if you're hearing this. We all have nicknames. Mine's Discount. I don't know if your audience knows, but so I got into it because I had just moved to, I had just started coming out of my house after the pandemic, and I met David, whose nickname is Orphan. And he said, hey, you're in the area. There's a group called F3, Fitness, Faith, and Fellowship, and check it out. You might be interested. And I'm a morning person. I'm up all the time. So that's why 6 a.m., I've been up since 3. So it's all good. So I was like, but nobody's up at that early. Nobody goes out. And so it's here's a group of men who are committed to kind of being there for each other, that want to work out together at 5:30. And by the time you're done, it's 6:15, and you've worked out for the day.
Yeah.
I was in. So I started working out March of last year. So it's been over a year.
Yeah.
And again, it was great because I could modify, and it was all body weight calisthenic stuff, so I really enjoyed that. But again, it's also high repetition. So also after doing 100 Merkins or push-ups for your audience, right? My shoulder would start to bother me, or my for squats. So I mean, I was able to kind of modify, but again, I noticed myself some injuries from time to time.
Yeah, and it's a common story that we hear from guys who do a lot of high intensity work, whether it's body weight conditioning, whether it's stuff that's CrossFit, and there's nothing wrong with CrossFit per se, but I think sometimes as you and I, as people get older, our bodies do change.
Yep.
Our mobility does decrease if we're not working maybe some of the shortcomings that we have or deficits that we already have in our joints.
Yes.
So you add intensity with time, and you add age in there, and things can sometimes go awry.
Yeah. No, I did go to PT prior to finding you, right? And again, I think what happened was it was just kind of, during the session, it was nice, but then I was left on my own and just didn't feel like it was this kind of support that I had here. And I did try acupuncture. I did try, other physical therapists, but I feel like this is the first time in decades where I feel I've seen how I've increased my strength. I mean, I look different, I've gained muscle mass. And so that's something that I've also really enjoyed. And I'm also more aware now of my limits in the way that I wasn't before.
Yeah. So talk to us about what maybe the traditional physical therapy place was like for you when you went to those places.
I went to another physical therapist in the Raleigh area, And again, when I was there, it was like very nice, similar, like, he showed me some activities, he would do some assessments, he would maybe do some movements, but like, and then he'd tell me, okay, I'm going to give you some exercises for you to do at home, and then I'll see you in a month. And it was just a kind of like very transactional in that regard, for sure. And he was nice enough, but it just felt like, just kind of a mechanical shop. You come in, you get treated, and then you go out, right?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I did maybe get a little better, but very quickly I got re-injured. And I wasn't able to sustain any change.
Yeah, that's a common story that we hear from people who've tried the traditional model. And I think sometimes in that model, the PTs are well-intended.
Yes.
I do think that there is a lack of time sometimes, and they've got maybe 3 or 4 patients an hour, so it's hard to really dive into finding what the root cause problem is for their patients. And you and I have both found that sometimes it's multiple issues.
Yeah.
And if you only got 15 minutes with a patient, there's just no way that you can dive in and say, what's really going on here?
Well, and that's what really impressed me when I came here. I did the free assessment, and within 20 minutes, just like you have such good bedside manners, if you will, so I was like, I really felt listened and seen. And so that after the free assessment, like, let me do the full assessment for the hour or hour and a half. Like, you sat down with me and you go through all these things. I also was so impressed by the technology. Like, you had your iPad taking pictures and like doing all these things. And I had never done dry needling before. And I was like, whoa, like, I'd done acupuncture, but not dry needling with the electric shocks.
Yeah.
And I just saw the difference in like within that first assessment.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like if I can see the improvements in my body in that hour. If I keep coming back to this, like, I will get better. So it was like that interaction. Now, it took me a year to come back just because I had to make sure that the funding and all that stuff, the investment was, I could do it.
Yeah.
But definitely, I'm so glad that I did.
And I'm so glad you said that, because health is an investment.
Yes.
And I think that you sometimes get what you pay for, where, you might be paying a 20-hour copay going somewhere else. But if you're getting 10, 15 minutes of treatment or one-on-one time with a therapist there, and they haven't even dived into what's going on, you're kind of just wasting time and resources.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, like, I wish, like, what I had paid the other PT, I just would have known about you, because that investment would have been sooner here. Because it's, the saying, health is wealth.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if you have all the millions in the world, if you're not healthy, you can't enjoy it.
Exactly. And I know that we're not the cheapest game in town, but we really try to take the time to, because we really do care about our clients and we want to see where they want to go.
Yeah.
And as you know, I mean, we wanted to get you back into getting stronger, because that was a big goal you had. You wanted to get back into pull-ups and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you weren't able to at the time because of your shoulder.
Yep.
And then we couldn't run very much and squat stuff because of your groin and stuff like that.
Yep.
But how's that been going for you now?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, I was just started doing, as you know, like starting doing pull-ups again, maybe like a month and a half ago. And it's just been so nice to get back into it. I've been doing these like archer push-ups, which my shoulder would have not been able to handle that.
6 months ago, you could not do that.
At all. And so, and also, like, I mean, I remember you helped me kind of assess my running style.
Yes.
And so I based on that, I've done some changes. So again, the hips don't bother me as much when I run. So
that's good.
So yeah.